right. Hit the start button. Everything should be starting out soon. Checking out, making sure everything's working. Everything should be going through. That's the ad. Get out of the way. There you go. Everything should be going through. All right. Okay, let's give it a moment. Let me tweet this out. And we're ready. Okay, I'm going to give it a moment. So everything's tweeted out. I'll ask my guest to tweet it out as well. And I think we are pretty much ready. All right. I don't expect as many people here because of the time, but that's by design. And let's just set up the name to make it correct. We're going to be talking about alt-furry today. All right. Everything should be good. All right, everybody, welcome to the show. As you all know, I am your favorite shitlord Verillo. Now, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and because of it, I'm going to be forced to make some disclosures, and it's not something I enjoy. But today we're going to be having a conversation with the creator of the alt-furry. The creator of the alt-furry is John Kelly. As you may or may not have known, that I have worked on multiple things with John Kelly. He has co-hosted the stream on multiple times, and he even served as a moderator once. He approached me and asked me to do this interview. The reason for it is that he's been kind of, referenced as the creator of the alt-furry, but very few, if any at all, have actually asked for his side of the story. So he wanted to kind of get out the information as to what exactly the alt-furry is, why he created it, and all that other good stuff. We have conversed about this interview beforehand. He has given me references, but I have not shared the questions that I will be asking him here today. Furthermore, this is going to be a conversation, but I'm not going to inject my own personal views into this. I'm going to do my best to try to be as neutral as possible and to serve as an interviewer / devil's advocate in certain occasions to get as much info as we can about the topic at hand. I believe I am capable of this, but I wanted to give that disclosure just so that everybody knows beforehand what's going on. I believe that I can be objective on this and didn't recuse myself for two reasons. One, as everybody knows, I have a commitment to the truth. And since nobody wanted to talk to the creator of alt-furry, I feel that it's kind of my duty with this platform that I have and whatever viewers I get to share John's story. No pun intended. And number two, I know very little in reality of alt-furry, so I think I can be relatively neutral. That being said, I do want to make a couple of disclosures. Number one, I am personally against degeneracy in all of its forms. I'm more strongly against sexual deviancy. Things like the furry fandom can be considered into this arc. Once again, I'll try to leave my beliefs at the door and will do my best to attempt to make this as neutral an interview / conversation as possible and to try to get the truth out of this. So you guys now know everything that you needed to know going in. There's going to be a list of resources. I have not gone through all of the resources that Kelly has given me, only a few of them, but they're all going to be linked. Some of them I will not show because they show, let's say, things that are not appropriate for YouTube, but they're going to be in the description, so you guys can check that out. So, I'd like to welcome you to the show, John Kelly. And we lost our guest in the first 10 seconds.
No, I'm here. Sorry about that. Had a bit of technical difficulties on my end. Yeah, I'm glad to be here today.
So before we start, I want to go over the ground rules publicly. You already have been informed of this. Number one, I do reserve the right to mute you at any point during the interview. You have agreed to this prior, correct?
That is correct.
Number two, I also reserve the right not to show specific resources, even if you request it, in the show itself in order to protect the YouTube channel, correct?
That is also correct.
Okay. And you've also agreed that I will be a neutral party. I'm not Verilo in this conversation, so I will be sharing views that might not be my own, specifically when playing devil's advocate against your statements, if it comes to it and if it's necessary. You've agreed to this, correct? John?
All of it, yes.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you there for a moment.
Did I get?
Yeah, you got cut off
I
there
may
for
be
a moment.
suffering. I may be suffering lag issues on my end.
Okay. Well, we'll try to work through, and if it gets a little too difficult, we'll take a pause and for the cause, and you can try to fix your shit. Now, let's get right into it. The reason why you called in particular, there are multiple reasons, but the strongest reason in particular that you called for this interview / conversation to happen, and you requested me to be the neutral party to interview you, was a specific interview, and I used the word interview 6 times there, that happened on a website known as castaliahouse.com. And it was an interview with QuQu and Dan Wolfgang that was done by a man named Alex. And in this interview, I'm going to start off by reading a little bit of it to the audience. It's also going to be available in the description below. But it says that, both of you two guys, he thanks the person for agreeing to them to come on. And again, everybody can go and read this. But the portion in particular that kind of justified this whole thing is that he eventually states that the founders, and he being QuQu, in response to a question where Cicerova says, you guys are involved in something called the alt-furry. From an outsider's perspective, it appears to be a mix of satire and self-parody that combined with an actual political conservative right-wing bent that mirrors the so-called alt-right. Care to explain what alt-furry is? QuQu states that John Kelly is the founder of the alt-furry, or the creator. I'm going to use these two terms interchangeably. You know what I mean now. I can see it here, the founder of the alt-furry. And he says that you made an observation, and we'll get into that in a moment. But before we start off, John, I want to ask you, since you are the founder of the alt-furry, first off, are you truly the founder of the alt-furry? Is this a fair statement?
Yes, it is. I was the first one to use the tag, and I used it in a very specific context back in, I believe it was February 2015 or March 2016.
So tell us, what is the alt-furry?
Well, the alt-furry is a containment label created to track those furries and other degenerates that are trying to co-opt the right, essentially. Much like in the fashion that Milo is running around telling the Republican Party that they're now the advocates for LGBT. Basically, these furry degenerates are trying to come in and particularly jump on the trends of the pro-Trump movement, the nationalist/populist trends, and the alt-right. Basically, it's what lefty pull is to pull.
Okay, why did you create the alt-furry?
Well, basically, I noticed this was happening with other groups and various groups, I should say, and one of these being furries. One thing that really inspired this was a moment where Cruz called out Trump for having "quote unquote" New York values, and you can say what you will about his attacks on New York being disgusting and how that really cost him the election, but on that particular point, if you really distill it from the rhetoric, he is correct. Trump is a very big advocate for LGBT causes, and we see this with other big figures in the alt-right and other sections that are supposedly saying they're going to save the West and all this other stuff, but what they're doing is just promoting more degeneracy at the end of the day.
Okay, just for clarity's sake, what do you define as degeneracy?
Well, you can look up degenerate on Google and see what it means. It's not really that hard. It's basically anything that is undesirable, that is both abnormal and undesirable to society that causes to go on the decline.
And for clarity, are you saying that furries are a part of this group that you labeled as degenerate?
Absolutely, yes. They are really obsessed with sexual deviancy, and they are really stuck in their own fantasy sort of world, and they really seek out others and try to get as many people absorbed into their decadence.
Okay. We'll explore that in a moment. I want to go a little bit. I'm going to go back a little bit. The first thing I want to ask you is that QQ in the interview defines alt furry a little bit different from you, and please correct me if I'm mistaken here. Just to sum up what you said it was a outgrouping, a containment label, let's say, meant to identify what you refer to as degenerates, specifically furries. Where, first off, was this? Because QQ talks about Gamergate, and we'll get into that in a moment. But where did you notice this in particular? He says it's Gamergate, and I want to read what QQ said real quick, just so I can get your thoughts on this and see if this is accurate in your opinion. QQ said, and I quote, the founder of Alt Furry, John Kelly, JMK on Twitter, made the observation that O'Sullivan's Law held true in the case of Gamergate and had devastating effect on the impact to mid to late 2015. So it seems that he's limiting the scope of this to Gamergate. How do you respond to this in particular?
Well, he's half correct in the sense that, yes, I have made this observation in the past. Sullivan's Law, which is basically anything that is not really becomes left wing, that hurt Gamergate and cause it to be damaged beyond repair. Otherwise, never have a platform. The ideals that were originally found and set forth were eroded. However, where he's wrong is this is really irrelevant from the purpose and the definition behind the alt furry tag.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's not get into why he's wrong before the man speaks. And going right into that, he says that, and let's go to his definition of the alt furry since that's where you were going right now. And so that we can kind of get your thoughts. So, but before we do that, do you agree or not with the fact that this observation was pertinent to Gamergate?
Well, it's pertinent in the sense that most of the people from the alt furry actually do come from.
No,
Gamergate.
but your particular observation of this, did this observation come to you as a root of Gamergate? Was it during Gamergate, or does it go beyond the scope of Gamergate at the time when you created the tag?
Did it inspire me to create this hashtag? No. The inspirations more came from the way certain parts of the alt right were headed into and stuff like that. Not with Gamergate specifically.
So it's more fair to say that it was more your involvement of alt right, with the alt right in particular, excuse me, than Gamergate that inspired you to create this. Is that fair?
Technically speaking, yeah.
Okay, so I guess where you differ from QQ is specifically the what case in particular was analyzed. Would you say that it's fair to say that the same case held true for Gamergate, though? That what you just stated regarding the alt-right, do you think it's also fair to say that that was true with Gamergate as well?
Gamergate getting co-opted by degenerates and advocating more and more for them. Yeah, I've noticed that happen a lot. Yeah, I would say that is accurate.
So at least in that point, you and QQ agree in the sense that you did make this observation. Where you disagree is he's limiting it to the scope of Gamergate, while you're saying that it had more to do with the alt-right. But you do agree that in Gamergate the same thing happened. So it's okay. So the important thing is we got the truth here, so it's good. Now I want to go into QQ's definition. QQ defines the alt-furry in particular as, and I quote, alt-furry is explicitly right-wing and explicitly radical furry political movement. It will stand as a bulwark against the furry fandom completely surrendering into the excess of the left. He says more, of course, and you guys can read that in the description. What are your thoughts on this small segment of the definition that I just read to you?
Well, he's technically not wrong, but at the same time, it's kind of like it was basically designed to attract such people into, like, brand themselves in such a thing. Where he is wrong, though, is that the alt-furry quote-unquote movement, if it can be called such a thing, it's basically just a bunch of liberals feigning right-wing beliefs. They are liberals by nature because they constantly promote degeneracy, and that's what they are.
Okay, whoa, stop. Let's stop right there. Okay, so you're saying, first off, that furries are left-wing. QQ makes the explicit statement that the alt-furry is an explicitly right-wing movement. When you created the alt-furry, you said that the purpose of it was to kind of label and, I'm assuming, attract people who you saw in the both Gamergate and the alt-right that were, let's say, fake right-wingers that were trying to co-opt things, and you wanted them to have a tag to kind of contain them. QQ states that the movement is explicitly right-wing, but you're calling them left-wing. Can you elaborate there?
Well, he can make that claim as he wants, but just as he can make that claim, but the original purpose of the tag still remains, and it's working rather effectively as I described it. His point doesn't really add up, because he's basically making left-wing talking points and calling them right-wing when you get down to it. It's this kind of dual nature that I've noticed that that once again certain aspects of the alt-right have actually gone into, where they'll actually be promoting liberal ideas or ideas that are just completely counter to what they're saying, and then they'll call them the right-wing values. Like, if you go further into that response of his, he specifically says that they have had. He specifically says that they've had enough social progress advanced for themselves.
Oh yeah, that's a part of the interview, but I don't want to get into that just yet. Let me ask you something else. Regarding that specific definition that he gave, you're pretty much saying that you can't be explicitly right wing and a furry at the same time. Is that fair?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay. However, the way that he continues, if you read the interview, the way he continues and states that after the per furry political movements, he says it will stand as a bulwark. Blah blah blah. He said that. He said its motto is we must ensure the existence of our species and the future of furry children, and its core principles are anti-speciesism is a code for anti-furry, and species mixing is furry genocide. These are clearly plays and satirizations, of some of the mottos and beliefs that the alt-right holds. My question to you is twofold. Number one, the alt-right in itself is different from right-wing, and some have argued that while most of its core principles are right-wing, some of the things are now differing from what alt-right considers conservatives, for example. Isn't it fair to say that perhaps this can be a right-wing movement and everything, with the exception of the fact that they are just furries who are right-wing? And the second part of this question is, doesn't the part regarding furriness just seem like satire to you? Because these two quotes, they seem like a joke to me. What are your thoughts on these two things?
Well, to address the first point, no, you cannot get rid of one of the core pillars of what makes up the right wing, which is basically opposition to degeneracy that goes against Christian, because it goes completely against Christian values. If you don't have that, then you're not of the right. You at best you might be center right, veering on towards the left. But I don't even think this term center right is even a useful term here. It's just fair enough to call them liberals, especially what they're advocating for. And if you go further into his answer there, he specifically advocates that in order to join the alt furry, you have to adopt a persona.
Wait,
there is spreading degenerate.
Let me read that because I don't want to put words into his mouth. I want to use exactly what's here. And keep in mind, Caleb, we need to try to contain ourselves to what's here, and try not to go into hearsay. So he specifically says in paragraph number 3, which is what you're referring to, he says if you want to join the alt furry movement, wait, let me get that on screen because I'm reading 2 copies of it. Okay. If you want to join the alt-furry movement, you simply need to adopt a fursona and start using hashtag alt-furry tag on social media accounts to do the work of the movement. If you're tired of the fandom slipping leftward and you want to demonstrate the absurdity of increasingly common rhetoric based off of the hierarchies of privilege, join the internet's least privileged group and help us weaponize it against the very humans who invented it in the first place. Before I let you continue your point, again, it says that these are people who don't want, the furry fandom to continue to be left-wing or to continue to slip into left-wing, and perhaps this is a small group of them or a vocal minority who wants to advocate for right-wing beliefs and just want to be left alone to live their own, their own lifestyles, kind of like a cultural libertarian. Go ahead, first of all, complete your point, and what are your thoughts on this idea that I just expressed, the cultural libertarian belief that you can, live your own life and that kind of stuff and still be right-wing?
Firstly, that's the first problem with that is cultural libertarianism in of itself is just a really lengthy and drawn out way of describing a liberal. There is no reality where cultural libertarianism can be considered right wing. Likewise, with the alt furry movement, look what he's saying here in that paragraph. He's using this. He's advocating using. At the same time he's using the progressive stack rhetoric, where basically the underprivileged groups need to rise above the
Yeah, but wait a minute. That sounds like a joke
people
there.
that are
He's talking about weaponizing against humans. That's clearly a joke.
Well, he can claim it's a joke, but QQ has this kind of dual nature where he tries to present himself as a serious figurehead or a serious, pundit, if you will, by going ahead and saying that he's going to be in the very interview itself, like at the beginning. He specifically states, and let me just take a second to bring it up. Give me one moment, please.
Go ahead.
Okay. He specifically says that he's a small team of two seeking to present news and opinion on various happenings in both political and cultural spheres, giving our own twist to avoid on jumping the latest YouTube bandwagons. And it's right there. He's saying that he wants to be like this kind of objective news source. So he can't simultaneously say that his actions and the actions are completely. He can't say that and also try to make claim that he's just doing satire. It's just for fun. It's just a joke. It's kind of just one moment he's serious, but when it's inconvenient, he just says it's going to be, not.
Well, wait. There's a lot of jumping to conclusions there, and let's try to leave the QQ media segment for a little bit further. I want to finish off first the alt furry itself, and then we can move into that. So again, going back to what QQ said. He did say that you need to adopt a fursona in order to be a part of the alt furry, and you're stating that itself is spreading degeneracy, correct?
Correct.
Okay. My question to you is, however, do you think it's fair to say that, let's assume that, because you strongly believe that you cannot be a furry and be right wing, can't you just be left wing in this one thing and be right wing in everything else? Because again, the points that he's pushing, and he does talk about this further in the interview, and I will bring up the quote in a moment, that he is pushing for the same things, and the interviewer points this out, that most of these people in the alt-right are pushing for, and that's why acceptance of these people, of furries, is a likely outcome. In the similar way of Milo Yiannopoulos, he might be a homosexual, and many people might disagree with his lifestyle, but it brings with him many valid points. What do you have to say about this particular segment?
Well, it's funny that you bring up Milo because it's exactly the same reason why Milo can't be considered right wing at all. I wouldn't label Milo as any actual political alignment, to be honest, because he's just completely hypocritical whenever everything he says. The main thing he's been pushing for in the past year is this notion that the Republicans are now the real advocates for LGBT groups, and they're the ones that are going to go forward with pushing for their rights and their causes. Likewise, QQ is doing the same thing, but just doing it for furries. You can also have any other set of you can always have this one little exception of this heterodox belief and just say, oh well, I'm still right wing except in this area, but it just doesn't make sense to say that. Like Louise Mensch from Heat Street, for instance, she's an avowed feminist and claims to be conservative, but all her policies and practices are all liberal. So you can claim to just reject one of the core tenets and still consider yourself to be this particular thing. But when you actually break it down, that makes that once you do that, you're basically lying to yourself and lying to others about it.
Okay, the specific quote is on screen. Let me bring that up, and then you can continue. Alex, the interviewer, says the right wing has traditionally been known for its fear and reluctance to accept alternative lifestyles and identities, but that has been changing lately. Milo Yiannopoulos, for instance, has probably done more in the 2 years to change how conservatives see gays than decades of activism. Now, a lot of people who aren't furries or who won't quite get, quote unquote, what it is, you're all about, are starting to see you guys and what you are doing, whether it's politics, gaming, science fiction, and saying, hey, you guys are on the same page as us. Don't you think the alt furry will achieve a similar success for bringing a degree of understanding and acceptance to the furry community? let's have you answer before I read QQ's answer. Let's have you answer that question. Do you think that what he is doing will in fact bring acceptance? You've already established that you believe that is a negative, but do you believe that him doing this will normalize in a way the furry fandom and what the people that you've called degenerates? And first of all, do you think this will be effective? And number two, do you think this is a problem?
To answer if it'll be effective, I don't think it will be widely effective. He may actually get co-opt various people and into thinking that way, into normalizing these kinds of behaviors. And to a certain degree, I think he's already succeeded in that sense. But it's a very, very limited degree. It's not going to be as widespread as, say, as other people's success with other degenerates. When it comes to the second thing, this is a problem. Well, it absolutely is a problem, because basically you're taking you're basically converting the values of the right and just supplanting them with values from the left. It doesn't make sense that you go ahead and promote these kinds of lifestyles that have such a net negative effect. And net negative is kind of a misnomer there, because there's no positive to it. I don't see why how he can go ahead and stand by this and still call himself "quote unquote" right wing. It's like if I was to say, well, what if we just made more people in the nation more economically dependent on the government, but all the other values I still hold dear, like I'm still like, you can't say that you're still right wing at that point. You're going against one of the core principles. It's not in line with it's an oxymoron. It's the best way I can describe it.
Okay, now let's go into QQ's answer, because I believe we can kind of get into this particular set of beliefs that you're talking about. QQ says, similar to hacker culture split down to the middle, with half drifting leftward and the other half drifting rightward, any group that values personal freedom highly will, in my view, eventually undergo such a split. The portion that thinks that is the role of expansive government to guarantee rights and freedoms will drift leftward, and the part that thinks that is the absence of big government that protects rights and freedoms will drift rightward. So, how do you reconcile far-right views with the rather socially liberal reputations that furries are known for? First of all, most social issues that furries care about are, well, quite frankly, done. There's nothing left to do that requires the allegiance to liberalism. So, in the spirit of the phrase, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're a conservative when you're older, you have no brain, I am seeing quite a few of my friends in the community starting to draw a line in the sand and say, all right, that's enough social progress. Now we need a smaller government that will stay out of our business. So what QQ is saying here is two things. Number one, and again, I'm not trying to interpret what he's saying, but to kind of sum it up, QQ is saying, number one, that the culture war is over, that everything that furries wanted is already there. And now that the big government has given them those rights, they want to limit it so these kind of things don't happen in the future. Don't you think that at this point they're a useful ally? Because as QQ has stated, the culture war is over. They are already accepted whether you like it or not. What you call as degeneracy is now mainstream. So don't you think it would be best to align yourself with them in order to close big government that caused this that you disagree with in the first place?
Well, here's the thing. Well, for one thing, I don't like the phrase. I've never been a fan of the phrase culture war. But
excuse me, I'm going to step out for a moment. Keep speaking.
Okay. I've never been a fan of the phrase culture war, but the idea that he's saying that these social issues are closed and done with, that's absurd. It's ridiculous. If he goes ahead and because the reason why it's absurd and ridiculous is because he's arguing right there that liberals were these useful tools that he could take advantage. Liberalism was a useful tool he could take advantage of in order to progress society and in effect degrade it to a point where the lifestyle and deviancy that he has is basically well respected in the culture. They have things like gay marriage now. Gay adoption is still a thing, and these are all things that are acceptable to him. And then now he's saying that, oh, well, we need to protect these so-called rights that we were never entitled to in the first place, and we need to use the right in order to do this. So basically, he's essentially saying that liberalism is good when it benefits me, but then conservatism is also good when it benefits me. It's just basically being a two-faced hypocrite right there.
Okay, so I only caught the last portion of that. Let me see if I got all the points, because I don't know, since I had to step out for a moment. I apologize to you in the audience. So basically, you're saying, based on what I just heard, that it's first off, you're stating it's hypocritical for QQ to want to use liberalism, and please correct me if I'm misrepresenting you, to want to first use liberalism to get everything they want, and to then want to, okay, now we don't need them, let's step away and close down the very big government that gave me these rights in the first place. You're saying that's hypocritical, correct?
Correct. He's basically going ahead and using the left to his advantage, and then going ahead and using the right, and then also then using the right to his advantage.
I will
And
take
the
this
worst part,
moment. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. I will take this moment to address the audience, who I won't be addressing mostly throughout the stream. Two things to that. Number one, all of the links will be available in the description. Number two, this video exists in a vacuum of its own. It's not exactly representative of my channel. I want it to kind of be its own thing. So two things are going to happen. One, you can download this video, and I highly encourage it, and upload it in its entirety, or upload portions of it and link to a version that has all of the info, whether it be in my channel or somebody else's. And number two, to avoid brigading, since this video is probably going to be used in the future, since Alt's Furry is kind of in the mainstream right now, I've turned off the like and dislike bar. You can still like and dislike, but it's going to be invisible to everybody. Mostly, again, because this channel is known for being brigaded. I have proven this multiple times in the past. So I'm sorry, Kelly. Keep going.
right? So he's trying to now that he's gotten what he wanted out of the mainstream political left. And to be clear here, I'm talking about party lines and allegiances as opposed to the actual ideologies of left and right. In this particular context, when it comes to the right, what he's doing, he's using the political right. He's basically trying to utilize them by converting them over to liberal beliefs in order to protect, again, rights that he was never entitled to in the first place, that was given to him by, as you pointed out, a large government.
Okay,
And
so to sum up, because there's a lot of complexity there, I want to try to sum it up in a easy to understand way. You're saying that he only wants to move to the right now and limit the government because that way he can ensure that nobody messes with the rights that he's already gotten, that you state that his community didn't deserve in the first place. Is that a fair summation of what you just said?
I would say it's a fair summation, yes.
Okay. The next point I wanted to say, however, is, as I said, QQ is presenting a rather cultural libertarian form of viewing things, where he's saying that, look, eventually you're going to have to take this more cultural libertarian or libertarian approach where you limit government. How do you feel about limiting government?
Well, like I said earlier, economic dependency on the government is cancer, and it's not a very good thing. It's not a good thing at all, in fact, because it just all it's been proven to do is destroy economies and result in the people just becoming lazy and not doing for themselves. So you would need a limited government in that sense, but that doesn't mean we try to get rid of as much government as possible. That's an absurd and insane notion. Actually, you need the government to enforce. For the biggest thing that you need the government for is to enforce the laws of the land, as well as to protect the people from invaders and stuff like that. So, and part of protecting the laws that we have is also protecting society that we have, so that way we have a just and stable society. One rule the government one of the rules the government should do is basically oppose degeneracy.
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off there because that's veering a little bit far away. So quick question, and the reason why I continuously am asking you this is because as the founder of Alt-Furry, it's clear that all of this discussion seems to veer far away from the definition that you gave at the top of this interview. First off, correct? Do you agree with that? That these topics don't really have much to do with what you originally intended the Alt-Furry to be, being it a containment group for what you refer to as degenerates?
The topics I'm discussing?
The topics that are currently being discussed in the interview that we are, by extension, discussing now.
Correct. This is basically QQ's idea of the alt-furry movement is basically his.
So this brings me to an intersection, basically. Don't you think it is fair? You are the creator of Alt-Furry. The main proponent of the Alt-Furry is QQ, and he has stated that you are the creator of Alt-Furry. And I believe this isn't the first time that this has been referenced, and he's not the first person who has referenced this. Don't you think at some point political movements in all of their forms will eventually evolve away from what its original intention was. Like, you're stating that, yes, it was a containment movement for what you refer to as degenerates. But don't you think it's gotten to the point now that it's kind of taken on its own persona? You now have QQ with the QQ media, and we're going to talk about QQ media in a moment. I know that's one of the topics you want to cover. They've kind of gone into their own thing, and they're opposing the progressive stacks in many ways. They're opposing many liberal beliefs. They're opposing authoritarianism and taking a more cultural libertarian approach. My question to you is, don't you think it's fair to say that perhaps it's evolved past what you intended it to be?
Well, it can evolve if it wants, just like Gamergate evolved into ethics only. But the original population was and still is left wingers. You just have to just take a look at the alt furry hashtag. You find it filled with all kinds of degenerate filth. I even have there's even some of them saying that, oh well, we're not going to go ahead and support these ultra fascism or Nazi dudes at all, and we're just going to go ahead and oppose that sort of thing. And again, one of the main tenets of this thing is to spread it by adopting a persona. There's it's again, the original grouping and the grouping that currently is now is almost exclusively, if not entirely, left wingers. The only people that would actually be of the right who are using this hashtag would probably be people that are just doing it for the lulz, and that's it. And they're not trying to make any other political statement, not even a satirical one.
Okay, I want to first off, somebody has asked something interesting in the chat, and I wanted to kind of leave that for the final portion of this, but I think now is as good a time as any. So let's do that right now. People are asking me if I'm going to contact QQ so he can have part of this conversation. First off, I didn't think that QQ personally would have been as much of a topic here, but at the end of this, I was going to give QQ an open invitation to participate in the stream, to kind of give his side of the events, and I could serve the same role I'm serving now if he's interested. However, QQ has since blocked me, as you guys can see currently on screen. So the invitation is still there, but QQ has in fact blocked me, so it's impossible for me to request for comment at the moment. So if he watches this, which I suspect he will, QQ, you are also invited to discuss this topic at a later date with me serving this same role. So thank you for that. All right, John, let's move on to the second part of this, which is QQ media. You pretty much just sum up the past point. You do not believe that even if it evolves, you're saying that there's all still liberals, the liberals that you initially intended to contain are still there, and as much as they try to evolve, they're still in the end just liberals, and they're advocating against the things that, for example, the alt-right or right-wing or conservatives in general stand for. Is that a fair summation of what you just said?
Yes.
Okay, now let's go to the second part of this discussion, which is QQ media, and it's something that is discussed as well in the interview. The reason why I want to discuss this with you, and the reason why I think this is relevant to discuss with you, is that QQ media is, let's say, the main hub for the alt-furry, the main hub for this group of people that you claimed was just a containment group. And I want to read what QQ defines QQ media as, and then we'll get into what you think about, QQ media and what I just said. QQ media defines his website as a small team of two seeking to present news and opinions on various happenings in both political and cultural spheres, giving it our own twist giving it our own twist to avoid just jumping in on the latest YouTube bandwagons. First off, what is your opinion on QQ media? I mean, you created this as a containment group. You said that the people who are in it are just liberals. However, here you have a website where they're writing about news and, in QQ's own words, trying to present happenings, as he calls them, in both political and cultural spheres, and avoiding the twist of the liberal media, which is, I'm putting words into his mouth there, but we're avoiding the twist of fake news and hyperbole that we've consistently seen, specifically on YouTube in this case. What do you think about that? Because again, if it's just a containment group and it's just going to be that forever, this kind of website contradicts you in a way. So what do you think about that?
to me at all because this
You lagged out there.
rag.
Can you? I need you to repeat it.
When you get down. Okay. Sure. Um, it to be one thing, but when you actually look at the articles in question, it's just basically more stuff about it's basically more liberal propaganda.
I'm sorry, you're cutting off. I'm sorry, you're cutting off and speeding up. Can you take it from the top?
Sure. QQ can claim that the website is whatever he can claim to be, but back to the website, you can see it's just another left-wing propaganda rag. For one thing, aside from the whole furry stuff, there's articles on there saying how he's going out of his way to condemn outgrouping and labeling and stuff like that, which doesn't really that's more of a liberal belief. How they're constantly ragging about equality, identity politics, stuff like that. In addition to that, the website itself is basically a means for him just to get people to click on it so he can just generate more traffic and eventually make a buck off of it.
Okay, whoa. I'm gonna stop you. Whoa. I'm gonna stop you right there. This site does not appear to be monetized at the moment, so I think claiming that he just wants to make money is unfair.
No, it isn't, because yes, while the website is not monetized, he said in the video that I gave you beforehand at it that basically the only purpose in creating a blog, and I'm paraphrasing.
I'm sorry, which video? Because I want to play that rather than you say it. Which video? Because remember, I didn't see all of them. Does this contain? I'm gonna trust you here. Does this contain any content that I shouldn't show?
No, this you can show. It's from his main channel.
Okay, which can you on the ghost bin that you shared with me? Which line is it?
8. The link is line 8.
Is there any timestamp or anything like that that I need to take?
You can copy paste the link, and it should give you the right timestamp. If not, just skip to 35 seconds in.
Okay, I'm gonna play it. Please be silent. Here we go.
Gawker. The whole point of creating a professional news media blog such as Gawker is to build up an online brand that can be sold off to the highest bidder. They never intended to be a trusted news source when they founded the blog. The only thing they cared about was getting as many clicks as possible. Also, they...
What is the timestamp ending?
Should be about 45 seconds in, give or take.
Okay, well, we got to 51, so I think we've listened to the portion that you wanted to see. And again, you guys can see the whole video. It will be linked in the description if you guys want to get context. So what I'm hearing here QQ say is basically that that the only point to build a website is to make money off of it, something like that. The only reason to create a news blog specifically, and he's alluding to Gawker, is to sell it to the highest bidder. So I'm assuming that the implication you're making is that it doesn't have to be monetized because, according to QQ's own view, he could eventually sell the brand if it's sellable. Is that correct?
Yep, the potential profit is there. And to quote him directly, the whole point of creating a professional news media blog such as Gawker is to build an online brand that can be sold to the highest bidder.
Okay, but again, this still implies that he has to build the brand, and it's certainly not a brand. It's just a WordPress at this point.
Well, that's true. While that's true, they've already there's already signs of them going about and trying to build it as big and as huge as possible. Just look at one of the recent pieces they made concerning like an article they posted called Star Wars to promote new diversity or something along those lines.
You're referring to Disney to re-release their original Star Wars with more diversity, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And there's been a clip that's been floating around. QQ's assistant Dan was co-shooting the writer of that article, another furry called Mishka Husky.
This I have seen. Let's play it. Let's play it
as provocative as.
This clip I have seen.
Right.
So let's play that one. I'm gonna play that one because that I have seen and that I know is relevant to what you're currently saying. So let's play that. There it is.
You gotta be careful with the title and the first few paragraphs because that's all most people are gonna read, and so your goal should be to get them to just
gotta get them all.
Title and get really pissed. Like have the title be Disney to re-release the original Star Wars movies with more diversity or something like that, and then have a picture of like the Greedo one but instead of Greedo it's a black woman.
I'm gonna need some editing skills for that, but okay.
Yeah, I can make that one. It's not too hard.
Awesome. Let's see, Disney to re-release Star Wars with
More diversity.
brand new politically correct diversity quota.
No, you gotta be
far.
very serious with the title, because your goal is to trick people into thinking it's legit trick the people who aren't reading it into thinking it's legit.
Alright.
Okay, so that's the clip. I'm assuming that the part that you were referring to before I cut you off is the fact that Dan, who's the person who's speaking, is stating that he wants his writer to trick people into thinking that it's real to get clicks, and that's why you're referring to it as clickbait, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but right now, again, it's if we go to the site, first of all, if we go to the site, we'll notice that in the end, it's a parody piece. He states it's a parody piece written by Misha Husky. And Misha Husky, I believe, also has me blocked on Twitter, so I cannot ask him for comment. But he says that it's just, clickbait, and that they put a note, and this happened afterwards, that due to a reader complaint that they placed it under the clickbait tag. It was originally under Satire, I believe. Yes, it's in the Satire tag, and now they've placed it under clickbait. So they listen to they listen to at least feedback. Don't you think that's enough? I mean, are you concerned about ethics in games journalism here?
Well, it's not a matter it doesn't matter if I'm concerned with ethics in game journalism or not, because QQ and Dan themselves have already came out and repeatedly condemned clickbait and these sort of tactics that just put a provocative title out there and get as many people to I think, as Dan put it once, to rage click it.
But they said it's in the it's in the clickbait.
Twitter,
it's in.
They're not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
finish your point.
It doesn't matter if they disclose that's clickbait. That's as worthless as Nathan Grayson saying that he fucked Zoe Quinn. Does that make his coverage on Zoe Quinn's games any better? No, it doesn't. And as QQ and Dan have been very ardent to point out, we're very much against people getting involved with issues that are of an interest.
I'm sorry, you're lagging.
Sorry,
You're lagging terribly, Kelly. You're lagging terribly. I don't think anybody can make out what you're saying.
All right, I'll repeat that. It doesn't matter if they put down that's clickbait. That's like putting a cute disclosure note on an article, which they again said is not enough. That basically these news outlets need to be held to a higher standard. So you can, whether or not people care that it's about ethics in games journalism, they're still promoting ethics in games journalism, but not following it themselves. They don't really see any issue with this, and they're going ahead and they're engaging it. And just for the context of why it's relevant, even though that there's a cute little note on it, it's not. When they originally released it, when they promoted it on Twitter and other places, there's no sign, there's no wink and a nod at the audience, there's no tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. It's just, again, as Dan said, they're just going to read the title and the first few opening paragraphs. But
isn't that on the reader though? I mean, if it says it's clickbait and you still click it, isn't that on you?
Again, it doesn't say that's a clickbait when they're promoted on Twitter. And once again, in the article that you read, they're trying to present themselves as a reliable news source. So they're doing this dual sort of nature where they're basically, at one moment they're putting on the journalist hat, and another moment they're just putting an LOL just trolling guy's hat. Like, they have to either pick one or the other. They can't play it both ways.
Well, I really don't have much to say about that, I guess. Okay, so, but again, this is one mistake. Let's say let's accept that they made one mistake. The site itself, it all seems to stem from a joke, and despite what QQ's personal beliefs might be, if you look at the site itself, and the writers themselves, they seem to be very consistent. What are your thoughts on okay, Mishka made a mistake, and again, that wasn't even QQ, that was another writer, Mishka, who I don't know who that is, and you pointed out before the interview that QQ said that it was a team of two and that there's more people. These are collaborators, are not members of the team. So again, it's just a collaborator, and yes, maybe Dan was giving him these instructions, but the only way for these sites to get better is to learn from their mistakes. Don't you think that you're being a little too anal about Just one little Star Wars article?
Well, once again, when you go back into QQ's apology TwitLonger for SPJ airplay, he was very intricate and very precise about all the mistakes he made then. At what point do we start saying, okay, you've made enough mistakes, now maybe we should start questioning if you're really all that trustworthy to begin with?
Okay, wait a minute. Let's be fair here. Let's show the TwitLonger you're referring to, because that's another one I looked into. I'm going to read a little bit of it. He says, an apology to my fans and viewers are pulled for potential conflicts of interest, Gamergate. This week, some potential conflicts of interest that I was involved in, were brought to my attention. An act of whistleblowing was performed that revealed that I was involved in a DM group and a Skype call that may create an appearance of impropriety. Both conflicts of interest involve a DM group on the August 6th and a Skype call on August 9th, 2015. Within the call, I, along with Lumbakari, Ashley Snow, John Smith, Mark Seb, Paulo, Leo Pirate, and Sargon of Akkad, were involved in planning a script and writing the process of SPJ Airplay event that held in August 15, 2015. So here he's apologizing, as you correctly stated, but doesn't that show that he has a commitment to journalistic integrity?
How could it be much of a commitment if he's not actually following through with it? And also, I have to point out, this is a case of where he apologized after he was caught.
Well, okay, I don't want to get too much into that because that's a separate topic, and I really don't want to talk about. I don't want to engage with the, and this is the third time I'm doing this and going back on my word, but a commenter says Fuzztail is a QQ writer. I think it would be fair to say Fuzztail is a collaborator, not a writer.
No, no. Fuzztail's written 3 articles for that site, so yes, Fuzztail is a writer for the site.
Okay, what is the relevance that Fuzztail is a writer? Let's just give you that and assume that he's a writer. What is the importance?
The importance to me would be that the fact that Fuzztail is such a big advocate of the alt furry and also a direct associate of QQ Media itself is just a big sign that the whole thing is that this whole idea that it's right wing at all is just ridiculous. For one thing, this person was up until relatively recently described themselves as a socialist libertarian right on their profile, which you can.
Okay, let's not. This isn't about Lady Fuzztail. This is about QQ Media at the moment, so try to keep it down. I mean,
all right, well,
okay, that's just another collaborator. I mean, I almost feel like you're trying to represent the site itself based off of who writes on it and what their personal choices are.
Well, that's the thing. When you write for a website, what you do is
it's the content that matters, not who writes it.
But part of the content is who writes it. You can't separate those two. You can't compartmentalize. If the identity of the author is known and it's put out there, their personality and their intent is also going to be put into the piece itself. So the subject of their character is also highly relevant to the pieces they write.
I can't comment on that before going into more deeper into things that have nothing to do with alt furry and whatnot. Instead, I'm just going to talk about something a little bit different. Originally, when I was talking about the right wing traditionally been known for its fear and reluctance of alternative lifestyle, yada yada yada, there's another portion of that I would like to discuss, and I wanted to see your opinion on. QQ points out that furries are not a new online phenomena, that there's been a bunch of overlap with K, Pole, and Furry on 8chan nearly since its inception, for example. Or if you check the communities like U-18chan or lols.net, it's unlikely that political correctness will ever be able to invade the former and on the latter. I have seen many a happy merchant posted. So QQ is stating that, first off, it's political correctness, and again, I hope I'm not misrepresenting him, but he says that it's alleged political correctness that will never invade these sites where you have places like 8chan where furries happily live alongside people from Pole and K, etc. What are your thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, for one thing, 8chan only came about relatively recently. If anyone who knows anything about the site knows it came out in 2013. It only got big because of Gamergate back in 2014, and by the time 2016 and after a series of mismatched and unfortunate events and being sold to an opportunist, it basically dwindled down to a very, very small board that it isn't even that relevant as far as image boards go. It's like maybe the fourth or fifth tier of most popular image boards. Like, you're never going to go ahead and be on level of 4chan, 2chan. So this idea that old fags are from 8chan and regularly post there, it's completely made up. It's nonsensical. I don't know what he means. I don't know why he's saying that.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's get into what he's saying regarding the term old fag. He says, really, what I think you're seeing here is one of the oldest factions of the internet, the furries, are finally realizing in this political environment being so-called quote-unquote old fag, which I'd colloquially describe as someone who's been on the internet from before the eternal September, online, gives one some power. And now they're realizing that Andrew Breitbart was right, that politics are downstream of culture, at least to a degree. And that means that if we want culture that meets the needs of those of us who are right-leaning or far-right, they need to realize that as masters of the internet culture, they have considerable power and can affect change. So QuQu here is talking about how, first off, the furries are what you would call as old fags, and he defines old fags as pretty much anyone who's been around a long time on the internet. And he says pretty much that they have power and that they can influence and affect change. Do you feel that this in and of itself states that QQ is attempting to affect change on culture by using QQ Media, by him being vocal on Twitter, etc., his YouTube channel, etc.? And what change is he trying to affect?
I would say he absolutely is trying to affect change. I would say he's trying to overall, the change he's trying to affect, aside from promoting degeneracy and sexual deviancy, is basically trying to just say that all these little subcultures and groups are all equal and all special in their own way, which again is another liberal talking point and belief. Another thing about this term old fag that he's trying to put out there and trying to put an air of mystique around it, and as though it has position of power. All it means is that basically you've been using the internet since the early 4chan and something awful days back, way back when. And people from those groups like to keep using this term for this specific purpose. Some would even say it goes further back than nice, but that's really besides the point. There's nothing significant about the length of time you use the internet for. It just means you've been around longer. That's about it. So them saying that this old fag has some kind of special powers or significance it's not founded in reality. It's completely made up.
What do you think about the belief that that he quotes Andrew Breitbart saying that politics are downstream of culture? I know you just said that you do believe that he's trying to affect change, but do you believe he's trying to affect political change in the sense of, because again, if he wants to keep the culture that has been created, he's going to have to eventually move away from this cultural libertarian belief, and he's going to need the government to protect it, because if you allow freedom, then you allow freedom of rejection. Don't you think, and during this conversation you've kind of labeled it at the opposite, that he's more of a cultural libertarian who wants to reduce the power of the government now that he's gotten what he's wanted. Don't you think that in this very statement he's clearly saying that he does, he wants to give power back to the people in a sense?
This with the statement politics goes downstream from culture.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's. I quite frankly, I don't think QQ quite knows what that means, and I don't think many people do know what it means. It basically means that it's people just go with the latest trends and what's cool and hip in order to send a message across, rather than actually standing for anything firm or ideologically sound. They'd rather go off on what's trending as opposed to what's right and what's wrong, or what's best and or what's best for the nation. In other words, that's basically what it means. And Andrew Breitbart knew this, and he took advantage of it. But this idea that he's trying to put the power back in the people, no, I don't think that's what I don't think that's what he's trying to I think that the only means that he's trying. I don't think. No, that's not what he's trying to do. I don't think he's trying to influence it in a way that aligns with his view of his liberal worldview. Is what
You
I would say.
mentioned something awful during your response. I need to call you on that. Are you implying that QQ has anything to do with quote unquote goons?
Well, if he, I wouldn't surprise me in the least, but I currently have no evidence I have no evidence to suggest that I have no definitive evidence to say that he is one.
Okay, so it's fair to say.
Except, well, unless you consider his connections to Denton and Maritos, of course.
Wait, no.
And how
You mentioned this before the stream that you wanted to talk about DDM. I cannot possibly have a fair conversation about DDM. I'll allow you to
Well,
get
if I
this
can-
point across because he mentions it in the interview and says that that's where he met his assistant, Dan. But try to keep it in the context of all furry and the context of the question I just asked.
Well, as far as goons go, and as far as DDM and that stuff, goons like to play with memes that mess with people's heads and spread around these ideas that are just, that they like to spread ideas that A, promote degeneracy, and B, fuck with people. And one of the things that QQ is doing is using this alt furry hashtag to promote this kind of hybrid mutant sort of thing that's appealing to other people, and basically a degeneration of the right.
Okay, I need to cut you there because during this interview you have stated that QQ and his staff are degenerates. I think it's a little unfair, in particular QQ, to call him a degenerate just for liking, the furry fandom. Furry fandom simply being people who are interested in anthropomorphic animals. Don't you think it's a little unfair to simply say he's a degenerate because of him liking anthropomorphic animals and having an avatar of a anthropomorphic animal on Twitter? I mean, how is he a degenerate? Explain that to me.
Well, gladly, but if I can have a second, I didn't quite answer the previous question.
Go ahead.
About.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
About. Well, the thing is, he is part of DDM, which has connections, which indirectly links him to something awful. Pigeon, as we all know, has an Eve Online account. Like, that might not be very well known.
As I said, wrap it up. Try not to get into DDM because that's not what this
And
is about.
Buzztail himself has had connections to goons for years. So again, it wouldn't surprise me if QQ did turn out to be from that that play.
Okay, there's some basis to what you're saying, but it's still speculation. So let's drop that line of thought.
I agree. Just to reiterate, I don't currently have definitive evidence that he's from something awful, but it wouldn't surprise me if he would turn out.
Okay, so I allowed you to bring up the fact that he is from DDM and that he actively promotes it in this interview, and the fact that there are people with definitive links to something awful in it, but that's the last mentioning of DDM in this interview, please. More importantly, however, let's go back to the following point I asked. I want you to explain to me why you consider QQ a degenerate. Again, don't you think it's a little...
several statements...
Go ahead.
No, I don't think it's extreme at all, because he presents himself as a bisexual. Actively.
Is that in the links you gave me? And can I present it? Because which line is it?
Let me check real quick because not all of them are safe.
Yeah, I know there was a few, and I stopped looking at them because of it.
Lines 28 through 41 are safe to show. Some of these go back as far as like a year ago, but the most recent example of this really implies it. And if you read the interview itself, he heavily implies in the portion where he's answering about the alt furry about how furries need to be accepted and stuff like that. He heavily implies that he himself is a homosexual and and akin to them, and he's also outright stated it in the past as well. So no, I don't think it's unfair to say that he's a degenerate just because he likes the furry fandom.
I'm showing the different links that you specifically requested. Keep going.
Yeah. And also, if I know you can't show this on stream, but he's promoted a lot of sexually deviant filth in the past on his Twitter publicly. This is just a small sampling of it as early as April, not even April, May of this year. And he still occasionally will go ahead and post this kind of content to his Twitter profile. So it's not just that he likes anthropomorphic animals, because by that logic, there's probably a whole lot more furries out there than that the actual fandom would have you believe. Um, it's also that he actively and ardently engages in this kind of sexual deviancy. Uh, in fact, he's even heavily implied on Twitter a lot that he and Dan are in a kind of online relationship.
Okay, let's. Do you have proof of that on the links you gave
Um,
me?
in the specific links, I don't have those specific quotes, but I can get them, and I can get them relatively quickly.
Okay, get that because otherwise I want you to retract that statement because that's a heavy implication right there.
All right.
Meanwhile, I'll talk about the links that you showed. Here is one where he's saying he's bi. Can you still hate me, please? Where he's responding to somebody who quote unquote hates him. Again, these links will be available so you can read the full context. Here he's saying, before I'm not gay, I just take dicks in the ass. Someone stating to QQ because QQ was posting many anthropomorphic animals with huge penises. And QQ corrects him, stating that he is bi. And here's another one. We're saying your sexuality has hereby being brought into question. This is September 2015. He says, I'm pretty unambiguously bi, furfag. Now, here's my question to you. Couldn't this just be shitposting? Because at the end of the day, we don't really know much about who QQ really is. This is just a, created, personality. So maybe he isn't a homosexual, or bisexual, as he's claiming here. Maybe it's just tongue in cheek. Don't you think it's fair to make that assumption?
No, because whether you want to say yes and no. If you want to say it's just shit posting, that he doesn't really mean it, the fact of the matter is he's still presenting himself, but he's leading people to believe that he is a bisexual, and he's also presenting this as acceptable. So even if he doesn't really believe what he's saying here, when he makes these statements, he's still spreading and promoting degeneracy by showing himself to be in this way.
But again, can't it just be considered a joke, and we can just brush it off?
No, because even if you just consider it a joke, like, oh well, he has no real responsibility. He's also a journalist. Like, let's not mince words here. He's actively said that he's seeking out and reporting news, and he's making himself out to be a serious figure. All we have is what he shows, and if he's going to just risk his credibility like that by just shit posting about who he really is, then doesn't really bode well for him.
But he does present himself as right wing, so it's only fair to assume, since this does not really fit into right wing, that this is a joke, because he presents himself as hardcore right wing.
He claims to be right wing, but he has done nothing to present himself as right wing, to be perfectly frank. In fact, a lot of times he's often borrowing social justice rhetoric into his statements, and even when using them to promote the whole furry, he's doing this. So this entire claim that he's right wing, it's not supported by anything, especially by the fact that, again, you cannot be a furry and be right wing. It goes against one of the central pillars of what it means to actually be of the right.
I will take. I am considering, and this is something I was considering at the beginning of the stream, to take questions from the audience. I'm kind of timid on that, but I will break my word again and take another question from the audience, where he says, Unholy Black Hole says, all alt furries love Trump at least, right? Well, I guess since he won, pointless to hate him now. This is pointing to the fact that QQ and the people around him have been consistently pro-Trump. So doesn't that at least qualify them to enter in the same sphere of conversation as the alt-right?
Well, they can be in the same sphere of conversation. It doesn't really. I don't understand what exactly you mean by that. The internet doesn't.
Well, the alt-right is conservative. It's right-wing.
Correct.
So if they're in the same sphere of conversation, by extension, isn't it fair to say the alt-furry is also right-wing?
No, that's ridiculous. If I talk to somebody who's a liberal if I argue with someone who's a liberal on Twitter, it doesn't mean that they're suddenly of the right as well. That's kind of odd. And also, I should point out that even though there are, when I said correct that the alt-right is conservative / right wing, that doesn't mean that uh, it's that's only certain segments of it. The vast majority of it, I would say, is just basically bandwagoning because it's a popular thing to do, which raises the interesting point that liking Trump has nothing to do with pretending to be one of us. You can be a very big liberal and support Trump. Why? Because the opposing candidate was complete and utter garbage by anyone's standards. It doesn't matter on the left-right paradigm. Supporting a candidate doesn't really reflect your left/right paradigm. It just means that you supported what you saw in your eyes as a better candidate for whatever personal reasons you wanted.
Okay, so here's a specific. I'm going to. You gave me the links in question regarding QQ and Dan's alleged relationship. I'm showing one of them. The context here, however, is that they're talking about shitposting, and in the end, they say that they're asked the question of when are they going to have sex, and then they say they haven't announced it outside of DDM. But it's in a thread where they're talking about shitposting. Can't at least this one be partially discarded because of that?
No, because there is such a thing. Because it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter if they're joking or not. They're still presenting this behavior as acceptable. So,
give me a sec. I'm trying to pull up the rest. I'm having a little issues with it. Okay, here's another one where it says new video edited by blah 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 blah. Where Dan is saying he edited QQ's video. You worked magic on that audio track. I gave it with all the ugly bits, and you managed to fix them in the cover. He sends him a heart. Get a room already, and Dan promotes a love is love LGBT rainbow as a response. Another video, tweet chain between the two of them is Curry meets Mega Man meets all Furry regarding a video called Copy Kitty Trailer. Seems like it. He gives him a heart back, and says, are you offering yours? And you can use mine as long as I get to watch Manage de Toi. And that is another user that seems to be a furry as well called Kita, known as QSubi. Is there any background there you want to share, or?
I don't know who this QSubi is, but I do know that these exchanges pretty much heavily imply or heavily insinuate that they are indeed in an online relationship. And this is over the period of weeks. So them just shit posting doesn't really make a lot of sense.
But again, I mean, we're making a logical leap there. I mean, we don't know definitively.
It's not a logical leap. If you consistently and joke about this sort of thing in such a way, and you start saying that this is like it's too many to be just joking, fam. That these messages that they're sending back and forth each other. I mean, Dan even went as far as to just make like when you have again, all we have is the info they had given us in front of us, and we have to take them at their word. Like going ahead and saying, "Oh, it's just a joke" or just shit posting doesn't really fly. It doesn't really add up that they just be suddenly joking about this.
Well, okay, it's fair to say that because they're constructive identities, all we have is their word. And you did make the point earlier stating that they are, he's presenting himself as a journalist, so we do have to take the things he says at its word. But I'll just still maintain that it can all just still be a joke. And
well, if they're presenting as a joke, they're also again, it ties into the previous point. They're presenting the lifestyle as acceptable. And really, I don't think they'll deny it if you ask them or call them out on it. And I also think that there's also been multiple people who will also testify that yes, those two are in an online relationship. So if you don't believe me, there's other people's words who will vouch for this.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna keep it at speculation level. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else you would like to discuss. I'm looking at the things that you gave me that you wanted to talk about regarding QQ Media, because I don't want this to keep derailing away from the actual topic of interest, which is QQ's views, on the alt furry and QQ Media. Okay, is there any other topic you'd like to cover? Because I think we've gone through everything.
There's one other point that's interesting that I'd like to point out when it comes to the interview itself and the platform it's being hosted on. Castalia House is a company owned by Vox Day, who who QQ has come out in the past and criticized who has criticized on on at least 2 occasions. He basically put, I think the biggest one is he actually shared a screenshot of Vox Day actually saying that use of lying is justified when talking about Vox Day's book and basically showing the guy's own hypocrisy on that subject. The other time being when QQ called out someone for banning someone from his blog and said and compare him to Scalzi. I don't see why now that they're basically going ahead and basically, and right after this interview came out, QQ suddenly does a video in which he talks positively of the Sad Puppies and Vox Day. It seems to me that they basically entered this kind of circle jerk of these Gamergators and other people of that ilk who are just going around all promoting each other.
No, I think that's kind of a logical leap there, but I will give you that QQ has spoken negatively of Vox Day, yet had no problem going on his site and talking about the things that he was interested in. Isn't it fair to say that maybe his opinion on Vox Day has changed?
If it's changed, I think it's done out of a matter of convenience rather than any kind of principle.
Okay.
But that is admittedly, yeah. Go on.
Oh no, go ahead.
That is admittedly a bit speculative on my part. It could also be that the times that he was previously shitting on Vox Day, he wasn't being serious then.
But I think that's also speculation. But all right. Is there anything else you'd like to cover? Because I'm pretty much done questions wise.
Not really. I think that's about it. There might be like I think I've said everything I had to say about like the alt-furry hashtag and what it's about and what how it's being tried to be retooled by QQ to be something that quite isn't. But at the same time, it's only serving its purpose to help solidify themselves into this category.
Fair enough. Okay, so I think that pretty much ends the interview at this point. Thank you for coming on, John. This is the part where I drop my neutralness, I guess. But before I do, I will say, I'll drop the neutralness after the interview, except for right now, when I'm going to say one thing. QQ, if you do have your testicles drop and you unblock me from Twitter, and you would like to have a conversation about this where I play the same role as I played for John here, and you can kind of give your side of the story since you were mentioned heavily and much more than I originally anticipated, you have that invitation, and that invitation is open to you in particular and you alone. Otherwise, thank everybody for coming. As I said, you may download this video and you may re-upload it to wherever you choose. Thank you, everybody. Good night. It's been a lot of freaking fun. Not for me, because I hated this role. But you'll get my thoughts on other stuff in the future, because we're going to be doing more streams. So, see you later, guys. Thanks for being on, John.
All right. My pleasure.